Heavy armed militias are rising up as leftist rioters begin destroying themselves. In this video, we're going to take a look at how the escalation in leftist violence is indeed causing them to self-implode, and in the process, how more and more Americans are lining up with those who want to restore law and order, and this is all guaranteeing the collapse of the far left. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone, patriots all across the globe. Dr. Steve here with you. I'm back here in the office. As you can see, I had a wonderful vacation with my family in the Outer Banks last week. I couldn't recommend it more highly, by the way. Absolutely beautiful out there. But now we're back and ready to analyze current events, analyze some super awesome conservative trends so we can all live in the present in light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. It'd be an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel where each and every single day we get to celebrate the inevitable collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. Now, before we dive in here, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's Virtual Shield. Gang, if you're not using a VPN or a virtual private network on your desktop, tablet, or mobile device while browsing the internet, then you really are exposing yourself to a lot of potential danger. But protecting yourself online has never been easier. Here, let me show you. Here's all you have to do. Go to virtualshield.com, download the free 30-day trial, install it, and click connect. Once I'm connected, do you see how my IP address is now different than before? So I'm now basically invisible on the web. So if you don't want websites or the government or advertisers or anyone else, knowing your website activity, then you need to download this VPN. Now, to make it even better, Virtual Shield is offering our audience 50% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons. So don't wait. It's a limited time offer. Click on the link in the description below and sign up for a free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield VPN today. All right, King, so let's dive right in here now. The civil unrest that swept across our nation's cities, an unrest that, of course, has been defended and encouraged by the Democrats that have collectively ruined our nation's cities. They've collectively reduced our cities to rat-infested hellholes, demon rats. That civil unrest is escalating at a rapid pace, but not in the way that leftist Democrats and their cheerleaders in the mainstream Marxist media were hoping for. First and foremost, we are, of course, seeing a very real escalation going on in Portland. But unfortunately for leftist liberals, when all is said and done, Portland and the leftist movement there is imploding, okay? It's not just the escalating violence among rabid leftists in the city. That's going on, of course, but it's how leftist activists are beginning to destroy themselves. Now, we did a video just the other day, last week. The ultra-left Portland mayor, Ted Wheeler, was utterly and completely humiliated a couple of nights back. Remember this? As he tried to appease and pander to the far-left activists in his crumbling and imploding city. He thought it'd be actually a good idea to march down with a bunch of Marxist protesters and demonstrators who quickly turned on him, giving him a list of their non-negotiable demands, which included the need to defund the police department by 50%, freeing all protesters from jail, the removal of all federal agents who've been deployed by the Trump White House to begin these mass arrests that are striking terror in the hearts of these ultra-leftist agitators and rioters. And on top of it all, these leftists demanded that this feckless and cowardly left-wing mayor resign. And to add insult to injury, this is just beautiful. While they were meeting outside the federal courthouse, the mayor was getting booed and heckled amidst all the demands for him to resign immediately. To add insult, to pour salt on the wound, the police, sensing a full-blown riot developing, they launched tear gas into the crowd in an effort to disperse them. And in the process, this leftist mayor ended up getting tear gas himself, right? Poetic justice. So you had this complete and total failure of the leftist establishment in Portland. And then, of course, you have the feds cracking down on all the rioters and leftist thugs that are out there. Now, I'm sure you all know that the Trump administration, together with the Justice Department, has launched what they're calling Operation Legend, which involves sending in federal agents, U.S. Marshals, and the like, to restore law and order in these Democrat-ruined cities. And by restoring law and order, they of course mean locking up hundreds, if not thousands, of these rioters and looters for indefinite periods of time. It's being reported that federal law enforcement officers are using unmarked vehicles to basically drive up to protest suspects and rioters in the city, detain them, and then basically drive off. This is according to the Oregon Public Broadcasting System. It's actually further being reported that men in green military fatigues are patrolling around the city and making mass arrests, which is indeed striking terror among all of the rioters there. And it's happening just over the weekend. Nearly 20 rioters were charged with federal crimes and are facing serious prison time as a result of Trump's crackdown. In addition, the Department of Justice recently announced the arrest of 7 people associated with the terrorist-designated Antifa, who will now face federal charges for their roles in orchestrated riots at the main courthouse in Portland. If you're not aware of what was going on, basically protesters in Portland outside the courthouse, they began launching fireworks directed at police officers as well as the courthouse building. And officers moved in to disperse the crowd. A number of the rioters began throwing bricks and firework mortars at them. So the whole thing just descended into the typical violence and disorder and chaos that we've been treated to from our nation's Democrat-ruined cities. And Portland, of course, is no exception to this. And so among the numerous arrests that have been made, officially 7 known Antifa members have now been charged with federal crimes. And it's now being reported that just the other night, after clearing out rioters from Lonsdale Square Park there in Portland, police discovered a bag of rifle ammunition and Molotov cocktails. And this after they responded to reports of gunfire at the same park. Now, of course, this cannot be true because our left-wing activists disguised as journalists over at CNN and MSNBC keep telling us that these are just peaceful protesters, right? These are peaceful. They're only concerned about racial equality and social justice. So, you know, this ammunition has to be pure propaganda pushed by the authoritarian Trump administration, doesn't it? So, we are certainly getting our share of propaganda, but it's not from the police departments or the feds in Portland or for the Trump administration, that's for sure. Now, while all of this going on, in Louisville, Kentucky, we had a rather tense standoff between 2 opposing militia groups. Now, this is interesting. You have a black nationalist militia known as NFAC, not Effin' Around Coalition. It's creative, I'll give them that, all right? The Not Effin' Around Coalition, the NFAC, they came into Louisville in order to demand justice for Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed by Louisville police officers while investigating her apartment, in part because of a drug bust. Her boyfriend started firing at police officers. She was killed in the shootout. So this NFAC, this black nationalist militia, about 200 of them came to Louisville to protest. And they were greeted by another militia known as the 3%er militia, okay, which is a huge national militia organization. They came out to counter the NFAC and help the police. So obviously police were very concerned that both militias showing up could end up in a very real, like, civil war situation here. Now, things didn't work out too well for the black nationalists. Earlier in the day, one of their members' weapons went off, and he ended up shooting 3 of their own. Now, thankfully, nobody was, had any life-threatening injuries, but things aren't starting off too well when one of your own starts shooting your own. So, and then when they did march into the Louisville city center with both the 3%ers and the police standing guard there together, their leader just got up and ranted and gave some platitudes about social justice. And then they just basically left the NFAC there. So there was really nothing for them to do. But what is really important here to get is that we may have just seen the beginnings of what a second civil war may end up looking like were it to happen. Now, we've talked about this before, but I found the assessment by a counterinsurgency expert to be very interesting. And I think he provides the best analogy for what a civil war could look like here. And I think we just saw some corroboration of this over the weekend. Dr. David Kilchun, he wrote an interesting piece which argued that if a civil war were to break out in the United States, it would be highly unconventional and would most likely resemble the civil wars that ravaged the nation of Colombia between the years 1948 and 1958. Now, interestingly, that civil war also began with racial riots in Bogota over perceived social racial inequalities. Also of interest is that those riots and the violence and the destruction that characterized them were indeed exploited by their political parties, the Colombia Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, both of which mobilized their rural supporters to attack each other's communities. So the police, interestingly, took sides with the conservatives to take over areas where predominantly leftist anti-police sentiments reigned, which here in the United States would mean where exurbs and suburbs come in contact with one another. And what we would then be seeing is armed gangs basically taking over our cities, while armed militias would be taking over our exurbs. And the two would be fighting for control over our suburbs as a buffer zone. Interestingly enough, that's exactly what Tucker Carlson was predicting over the weekend, that these leftist mobs aren't going to be satisfied with just knocking down statues in cities. Eventually, they're going to be coming for suburbia, and they're going to end up torching suburban homes and the like. And that's when you're going to see the 500 plus armed militias that are currently guarding our exurbs. That's when I think you're going to see them teaming up with police and taking on these leftist urban mobs. And I think that's akin more or less to what happened in Colombia, and it's the most likely scenario for how a civil war would play out in the United States were that to happen. So, of course, we'll be keeping our eyes on how things develop here, but make no mistake, while tensions in our nation are at an all-time high, leftists across the nation look like they're poised to fail and fail gigantically across the nation. The nation is not galvanizing around these feckless left-wing mayors and governors who've demonstrated that they will not protect us. No matter your color, by the way, no matter who you are, left-wing mayors and governors have sided with the lawless rioters. And so it's no coincidence that more and more people are beginning to side with those who have promised to protect and serve and restore law and order. That's the major mistake the left and their mainstream media allies have made. And it is appearing to be a truly fatal mistake on their part. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on the far-left mayor getting utterly humiliated in Portland as he's tear-gassed in front of a crowd demanding his resignation. You're not going to want to miss this, so make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. Oh my, ironic justice. God bless.